This is Dennis Donahue. I'm back again with Peter Van Hilton, my good friend, for another episode of the Grower Talks. Peter?
Looking forward to it, Dennis, and it will be fantastic to speak to Don. I saw Don when he came over with Secretary Ross to New Zealand last year in October, and of course we've met since then, including the Salinas Summit. But no, this really looking forward to this conversation. I think it's going to be a great one because, as we know, Don is one of the great growers of Central Valley.
That's right. And since this is the Grower Talks, we have another great grower. Don, welcome.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Peter. Good to be with you today.
Well, and it's great. It's great to see you. We the uh, and I forgot to give you your props. The general manager of Terra Nova Ranches, but I think more importantly, for those folks who have been hanging around the ag tech world and all things that have something to do with innovation on the farm, there's a few names that just go right to the top of the list, and yours is one of them. So we're particularly excited to have a chance to visit with you.
Thank you, Dennis.
Don, talk a little bit, and there's a reason yours is one of them. Talk a little bit about uh, your career and your operation, just in terms of what you do, what your day job is. But then, along with the day job, you're pretty involved in a lot of things, all things California ag. So, kind of fill us in on that, and then what you're up to these days, and then we'll get started with our conversation.
Well, thanks, Dennis. So I began farming about 42 years ago. I really had no background in agriculture. I was a biology major. At Fresno State and planned to go into wildlife management. Things didn't work out there, and I ended up getting involved with the UC system as a ag trainee with the Farm Advisors office in Fresno, and the rest has been history. It's been something that really has been really rewarding over the years. But I guess I had a little different attitude than a lot of people, and I had somebody early in when I got into farming tell me, "Oh, you're going to get bored being on a farm all the time," and I looked at it as really as a challenge, and really a little different view than that maybe many in farming did. I looked at this as a real adventure, as something that you could actually make changes. You could experiment with things, and hopefully for the better, although we've had our mistakes over the years. But made a conscious decision. We used to grow commodity crops exclusively with a few wine grapes scattered in, but made a conscious decision in the early 2000s to move into other crops, to become more diverse, and to move into specialty crops. Years ago, we were told we couldn't grow canning tomatoes on our ground. The soil was too light, wouldn't work for them. Um, we actually got started growing some tomatoes in the early 90s, and that's now our main crop. And, switching to subsurface drip irrigation in 2009 made a huge difference. But um, I'm always looking for different crops, different projects that can really spread some of the uh, expense to some of these other crops that really maybe have more potential and maybe other people don't want to work with. But it's made our economic position much more stable and has brought the ability to move into some of these more experimental areas and bring new technology on farm over the years. So it's been rewarding.
I'm
We Go ahead. Sorry.
No, sorry, no, Don. Just very, very interested in that background. I wasn't aware of the fact that you didn't have that kind of previous farming kind of background, and really interesting thinking about that because it means in some ways you weren't necessarily therefore constrained by history and precedent, which possibly allowed you to become more innovative because you weren't constrained by what had happened in the previous kind of 2 or 3 generations. So that might be one of the reasons why you've got that very, very strong innovative trait.
Peter, I tend to agree with you. I have thought about that myself. Why are we where we are? And you're right. I didn't have somebody telling me this is how you do it, and don't vary. Had a much more open viewpoint. If we saw something elsewhere that might work here, we'd incorporate it. And I went to China in 2008 or 2009 and saw how they were using drip irrigation, which was pretty basic. There was no filtration, there was no pressurization. Tape was laid on top of their tomato crop, and came home and next year tried 120 acres and saw the yield difference. And the following year, we put in probably over 2,000 acres in 1 year and made a huge change, which put us in a very good position to build on that. We brought, it just helped our financial position. We upgraded all of our tractors to more sustainable Tier 3, Tier 4 equipment. We put in 2 megawatts of solar. We've done a lot of things that pretty early on that has really helped us long term.
Don, talk just to kind of educate our listeners and just to put in perspective, because you talked about diversification. You grow, if memory serves, some 20 plus different crops, don't you?
Yeah, depending on the year, 20 or more. We've been as high as 25 or slightly higher, depending on how you count. But no, we have really diversified, and we got a lot of pushback from our workers, from our managers that handle the irrigation and the equipment, because let's face it, people don't like change very much. I took a message off of a little note. I think it was at the Lawrence Livermore Lab. It said the only constant is change, and that's pretty much our motto here. Is we adopt, we try. Some things work great, some things don't, but we take the chance.
Well, and what's unusual about that number is your geography. So just to give everyone a quick education, where are you exactly?
So the farm is located in the San Joaquin Valley. We're about 35 miles southwest of Fresno. And you're right, we are unusual in that the majority of the growers may have 3-4 crops in this region. They may have almonds, pistachios. Cotton had been a large crop here. It's decreased, but tomatoes has been strong in our region, but really not a lot of diversity, really compared to what we have here on farm.
Yeah, no, I mean you're doing a lot of different things, and so along with that, that crop mix. The other thing, just to really kind of underscore your commitment to innovation. Talk a little bit about, before we jump into biologicals, and Peter, not having that, but he did have a biology degree, so that serves him well for this conversation.
He's a lot further down the track than I am, Dennis.
much biology, history. I think I'm going to defer to Don's judgment on this. But Don, talk about what you're doing with water and broadband. Two big topics, particularly in the Central Valley. But water. You certainly have gotten national attention with, and I think even some international attention with what you've been up to in water. So talk about that, and then your pilot project on the broadband.
Sure, Dennis. Yeah, we realized a long time ago that our region is groundwater dependent. We have over 50 wells on the property that we pump groundwater from and irrigate with. And, early on, I saw a ongoing decline in our groundwater levels in the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s, and saw that on average, every 4 years, we get flooding or floodwater coming down the Kings River. that borders the property. Typically, it looks like a desert, but once every 4 years on average, we get flood flows. And really began the process of diverting some of those waters back in the early 80s when we had a couple of years of some pretty severe flooding in the region, and started diverting it for in lieu recharge, in other words, using it to irrigate. But then as we progressed, I felt that, with the declining water table, let's say we lose a foot and a half of elevation per year, that if we didn't do something, we wouldn't be able to farm in the future. This was way before sustainable groundwater management. And so we started looking at bringing our region together. We did a lot of pilot studies to see if the gravel was acceptable for recharge. And we found that it would recharge well. But then in 2010, we had a nice visit from the chief of NRCS, wanted to come by and talk about water. And in 15 minutes, we had a little project put together and got a small grant. And in 2011, we had all the measuring devices out in the field. And lo and behold, we had a flood year and water showed up, which we took advantage of, brought it on farm, and started flooding wine grapes. And we're not just talking about during the winter while they were dormant. We flooded wine grapes all the way up to July, not continuously, but we put a lot of water. We put 13 feet of water on some of the vineyards during that period until the air temperature warmed up. The vines turned bright yellow, and we figured we better pull the water and save the vines. So had a normal crop, harvested in August, and really kind of laid the groundwork for on-farm groundwater recharge in the state. We followed that. We were able to get a grant with our Kings River Conservation District as our partner, and ended up took 10 years, but we now have 500 cubic feet per second canals, head gates, and actually finally this season, we're able to put it all to work, and we put over 18,000 acre feet of water back into the aquifer with the system that we had. So, and really, we've seen an increase in our groundwater table. We have monitors that we continue to watch, and so we know it's a great program, not just for our region, but for all the regions in the state that have conditions where you can do groundwater recharge. So we kind of became the leader in the subject.
Well, I like how you're willing to roll up your sleeves and take on big issues, and I know I've heard conversations about broadband for, you know, I you know almost a dozen years, and you're actually doing something about it, getting involved, and hopefully we can get some progress in that area as well.
Yeah, we've been working really diligently to bring broadband to the region. You'd think that because we're in California and we're close to the Silicon Valley, that we would have extremely great broadband, and that has not been the case. Prior to early this year, the best we could get was about 7 megabits download, and which you can't even watch a movie at your house with that. And I think 2 or 3 up. I mean, it was horrible. We've worked on bringing broadband on farm, and really the main reason, I mean, it's great that we need it to run our business, but we really needed to bring technology into the field, and that was the main driver. My goal is to automate the farm, the irrigation system primarily, start there, but there's a lot of other aspects of automation that we can bring that we actually need broadband for. So we're very happy now. We have 100 down and 20 up, which seems fantastic. And I know that may sound like not a lot to some of the peoples in the bigger cities, but this is really nice for us. It's a big change, and we have stability, which is great.
And since the house is right next door, I presume you can now watch a movie.
I can now watch a I can watch a movie on my with my broadband, which is kind of nice when I have time.
Touche. Peter?
Yeah, look, Don, I obviously had the opportunity to visit your ranch earlier this year in June. And over the past kind of 4 or 5 years while I've been coming down here and speaking to, different members of Western Growers, drought has always been kind of, first and foremost, one of the big challenges, that lack of water. Of course, 2023 drought didn't happen, excess water. It sounds to me as though you're making your property more kind of almost climate proof, in the sense that with your water investments, you can continue to kind of progress well. In terms of that broader climate issue, though, what impact do you think climate change is going to bring to growers, particularly in Central Valley, as distinct to Salinas Valley, in terms of how they approach potentially, increasing warm temperatures, the impact that will have on increasing pests, new pests? What's your view in terms of just how proofed neighbouring growers are to that probably world in which we're becoming more used to?
So Peter, yeah, we really our whole recharge project was built on flood control, floodwater corridor, capturing floodwater, and knowing that the climate is getting more extreme. We're seeing in the last 10 years we had 7 years of drought, 3 years of flooding. So that helps us on the water side to prepare long term. And our project is being expanded to include many thousands of acres more as we move forward. But what we're beginning to see in our tomato crops are these extreme hot temperatures that we're getting in midsummer is actually aborting tomato flowers. And by doing so, it reduces the yield. We're fortunate this year with all the rain. We actually had a cooler summer this year, and we had a beautiful tomato crop, probably the record crop for our farm, until we ended up getting a part of a remnant hurricane come through and ended up losing a lot of the crop because of that. But when you start talking about increased temperatures, you're looking at crop damage like we've seen, but you're also seeing the insect population reproducing much faster than they had in the past. And that's going to put a real strain on how we treat our crops moving forward. We know that it's going to become more challenging. We're already seeing exotic pests coming into a lot of them coming into California that are finding our climate very acceptable, and we're running into issues. There's no question. Long term, we're going to have some problems.
So I guess Dennis, this brings us back probably to Platform 10.
It does.
One of the key drivers of why we established Platform 10 after the Salinas Summit in June, it was really to focus very much on this type of issue. As you know, Don, we're just about to kick off a series of field trials where we're going to be trialing biologicals across 5 very specific crops. So tomatoes, you'll be pleased to know, of course, is one of those, together with citrus.
Well, and we all should be pleased to know that Don will be one of the growers involved in the Grower Trial Network. Though I'm not going to out Don. We were talking before he came on air, and he was talking about how he does so many things, and I said, well, that's a self-afflicted wound, and he said, yeah, my wife said to start saying no to some stuff, but not this. We want Don in Platform 10.
Hey, I thought we were 1 week away from that public release, but anyway.
Well, we want to tease people with it's going to be a great cast of growers.
It is, and I can't think of, from everything we've already heard, a better innovative grower to be directly involved. But as you know, Don, I mean, the purpose of the field trials is to provide growers with, I guess, more reassurance that certain biologicals will be able to do basically what they say on the tin. In other words, address the whole pest management area, but do the broader things, wider things that biological inputs can do. So, first of all, delighted that you're going to be part of the program. I think that's excellent. But going back to the Platform 10, and I've mentioned this before on previous podcasts, it's not just the field trials. What we're also trying to do is to educate growers as to the opportunity that they present. And for me, the question for you right now is, what else do growers need to know and learn to potentially be more willing to adopt and adapt biological solutions to replace some of the chemical inputs which maybe they've relied on in the past?
Yeah, Peter, as growers, we have our livelihood at stake, and tend to be a little reluctant to try some of the biologicals based on some of the history we've had in the past. And I think we have to overcome that. There's no question. There's a lot of pressure to move to more sustainable products here in California. And I think we need to be prepared for it. And that's what piques my interest in this. And part of that is going to be training for the growers. You've got to, number one, prove that the new products that are coming out will work in their situation. And Platform 10 is perfect because you bring the grower into the mix, large scale trials of products in real life circumstances on farm, where we can see how they look, see if they're effective. And so I just look at Platform 10 as a real opportunity to learn and to gain confidence in a lot of these new biologicals that are coming forward. We know that we're going to be losing some of the traditional chemistry that we have used in the past. And what's better, what can be better than to actually learn firsthand whether these products that are coming down the pipeline are going to be effective, and we're going to have to learn how to farm a little differently in the future with these. We may have to be doing things, different combinations with these biologicals, but we may be able to find some of these products that work extremely well and really fill some of the gaps that we have with the traditional chemistry. So I'm really excited about some of the products that are coming out. I think we're going to be seeing a shift as we move forward. No question.
Don, as part of, and I alluded to your agricultural extracurricular activities with the state. You were part of the working group of the Sustainable Roadmap, and I like the way you framed it. And we've certainly had this conversation that there's going to be regulatory pressure on certain tools that you have become familiar with, coupled with they're just gaps in the toolkit. But from a regulatory standpoint, and having participated in the roadmap conversations, if growers were to ask you, hey, what tools should we be most concerned that are likely to go off the grid? And growing so many different crops, just any general thoughts what that looks like? We're going to lose this, and we all appreciate the roadmap talking about that. Good economics and good science need to be part of that transition. But any highlights of where the transition is going to take place in terms of products or categories?
Well, it's a little early in that mix, but really it's the more toxic pesticides that are available and the fumigants. I think those two are going to be probably top of the list. Those that, as you know, the neonics have been under fire recently. They've been banned by the legislature, unfortunately not DPR, but the legislature actually jumped ahead and banned neonics in the urban environment already. So, we're starting to see pressure on products that may have detrimental effects to either the environment, which the bees are part of. So, and let's face it, none of us want to kill bees. We use them for pollination. We put a lot of time and effort into putting pollinator hedgerows to build our bee population, and we want to preserve it. So I think you're going to see some of the probably the more restricted materials be on the top of the list, and definitely fumigants. Those are the two groups that I see moving forward.
Going on, Don, to some of those more extracurriculum activities, as Dennis so kindly describes them. Over the past kind of 2 to 3 years, I know that you've been on a number of international trips with Secretary Ross, obviously representing California growers. What are the lessons, I guess, that you learn when you go on those international trips in terms of do you identify similarities between the challenges that California growers are facing and some of the growers in those offshore countries? What do you find the principal benefit of those
Yeah,
visits?
yeah, Peter. There's no question. Farmers have the same issues worldwide. It boils down to water, to labor, to regulatory issues. We're pretty much all in the same boat. But I think what we were looking for in the trips where we have gone to the major agricultural regions of the world have been, looking for innovation, new technology that can be adapted and brought into California. I think every trip I've been on, I've learned something new and have tried to incorporate it back into our farm, maybe change it a little to fit our needs. But um, it's amazing to see some of the innovation, outside of California, outside of the United States. And as you know, there's a lot of, there have been in the past a lot of Israeli companies that have been very rich in technology wanting to do business in California. And I think making these connections in places like Israel, in Spain, in Europe have been really helpful. It bridges the gap. It gets communication going between the countries at a state level, at a much higher level. But it also brings in commerce and technology into California, just as when we visited New Zealand and Australia, it was very advantageous just really see how everyone else is doing and farming some of the similar crops we have here. Um, Little subtle differences make big differences sometimes, and it's great to pick up little nuggets, bring them back, give them a try here, and helpful.
Don, we were involved in a conversation the other day with our advisory group that supports Platform 10, and Peter's alluded to the trial program, and I was struck by your very full support for the idea of, hey, we need to be looking at things more in a commercial setting. And can you expand on a little bit on that? Why that's important? And then, because at the end of the day, what we're looking for is commercial viability. That a manufacturer producer can make a claim that you're comfortable with as a grower, and then just at and even a synthetic, everything is not always 100%, but something that you have confidence in. So, from your mind, if growers are going to get more involved in this product development process, what gets you comfortable with, hey, this is going to be a good product?
Well, Dennis, we've seen over the years the University of California doing their trials, their farm advisors doing research and trials, and it's typically on a small scale. And I tend to think it's maybe easier to have an error in that, when you're dealing with small scale plots. And as a grower, I have variability in my field and or between fields, and sometimes they're definitely different situations. So for me, uh, we do trials usually every year with on a small scale, but larger acres. Um, we may divide a field up into thirds and treat each one differently and see if we have any differences. So it, you know, for me, I'd rather see it in my field. I'd rather see it on a large enough scale to where I have a real good understanding of how it works. And number one, really, if it's going to work and how it can fit into my farming operation. We're always looking for products that are really more sustainable. We have a worker safety program here in place, and if we can reduce the toxicity of a product that makes it safer for our workers, I mean, I'm all in favor as long as we get the control we need in the field to keep the crop healthy. It's a balancing act. We know that, and I think that in California here we're working toward more sustainable products long term. They don't happen overnight. We know that. We know the regulatory situation in the United States, but also in California, where we have to do additional registration to get a product to market. Takes a long time, gets very expensive. As part of the Sustainable Pest Management Task Force, one of our recommendations was to get these products that are safer to use through the system faster, so that the amount of money spent on getting them to market is lower, so that some of these smaller companies have a better shot of getting if they have a good product, getting it all the way to the end of the to the grower. And if we're going to have change, we have to have a product that will work. There is no question. If not, we're never going to get off ground zero. And to do that, we need to have the trials in the field. The growers need to see it firsthand. And that's why I want to be a part of the Platform 10. We feel that hey, if we can learn something early on, we can start transitioning quicker. So I feel it's a great program.
No, thank you, Don. I think you've also just picked up on the point I was going to mention. In Salinas in June last year, I could say last year, earlier this year, the Mixing Bowl came up with an ecosystem map, and they identified, I think, about 1,400 companies working in the biological space, and actually drew up a kind of innovation map of about 400. Now, clearly, as a grower, your time is limited because you've got so many other things to do on the farm. And the question I have is, in order for farmers and growers to actually get a better understanding as to how individual biological products work, what kind of advice areas do you get? Do you speak to your dealers? Do you speak to your PCAs? Where do you get the information that is necessary to make decisions around potentially which biological products to use?
Sure. So we typically put a lot of confidence in our PCAs that are on our farm every week. They get exposed to new products, but we look beyond that. We have a pretty good network. What tends to work pops up pretty quick between other growers, and we still follow the university recommendations, see what they're working on. But we also have people coming in with new products that they'd like us to try. We're very selective about that, just as Platform 10 is very selective about which products are going to go in my field. And I look at that as a screening device. You're not going to put out 30 different products that may have little or no potential. We're going to be working together to put out products that have a very good potential to control the problem I may have, whether it be a nematode, a fungus, or a disease, or an insect. So I know there's some pre-screening definitely going on at Platform 10, and I appreciate that, because you're right. Time is very important. Time is a tough thing to come by these days. So we don't just try anything here on the farm. We're very careful about what we do try, and then we do monitor it closely. So to me, that's how I get my information. I also I read the ads, the trade publications, look for and I read for new articles that may have something coming down the pipeline, and if it sounds good, we'll give them a try.
Sounds good. Peter, anything else?
We do know that this podcast is being viewed by a number of international startups. And so
Okay.
I guess my final question would be, and it could really follow on from probably your previous answer. I think you've probably answered my question before I ask it. But in terms of international startups that might be looking to come into the California market, what channels do you think they should look for in order to reach growers? Because what you don't want is a parade of people walking down your ranch driveway with product samples. So what would your advice be to an international startup looking to come into the California market? Who should they actually be talking to if they're not going to be speaking to the end grower?
We have had that parade of salespeople coming through our door, especially when Silicon Valley finally discovered agriculture was over the hill from them, and they were giving us solutions for the problems we never had. And we've all been through that. But you know, I look at Western Growers and the Innovation Center and Platform 10 as a very reliable way to contact growers that are your leading edge growers throughout the state here in California and in New Zealand and Australia as well. I just think it's a perfect situation for a startup to deal with a company and an organization like Western Growers and Platform 10 and War 42. They're just kind of a natural fit because these associations are made up of growers. And to be able to bring them into the mix is extremely important, and long term, I think, provides a lot of benefit. That's how I see it, because I don't have time to go through 200, 300 different products for my farm. We deal with certain ones that we know work, and we're looking at this as a real opportunity to get into the biological scene without taking the risk of trying everything that's out there, because we know not everything works, or not everything works in our situation. So I just think it's a real advantage for a startup to be a part of this organization. I really do.
Don, one last question, and given the nature of your operation, sometimes when and I'm a Salinas Valley guy, and so I'm a vegetable, and then you wander over to, let's say, see my friends in Reedley, and they're a fruit, and so you ask, when's the best time to talk, to talk to the citrus guys or the grape guys, and the answer is usually first quarter or something like that. They're finishing up and they're in between. You're never really in between, but when's a good, if somebody's looking to come into your neck of the woods? I mean, do you kind of look at everything on a rolling basis, or are there certain times of the year that are just better to get your attention?
So yeah, the summer we're maxed out. There is no question. We have harvest almost one crop or another almost every month of the year. I think February may be one of those months, but yeah, the first quarter is probably a little slower, and we don't really, we're doing some final work in our trees and vines that we have, and but it's pretty routine at that point. Once we start getting into the season, it becomes extremely busy, and it's hard to find the time to really sit down and talk to somebody about a new product. Or I mean, it happens, but it's typically, like you say, first quarter is probably the best area, even though we still have harvest. We harvest carrots during the winter. We have onions that we're working with, and but we have a wide variety. I think self-inflicted, as you say.
Well,
But yeah, I think that's probably a good time.
well, that was an enlightened self-interest question. Since you're part of the trial network, I need to know when to come bug you. So
Yeah, no problem, Dennis. You're always welcome, as you know.
I appreciate that. You have my second favorite. You have my second favorite dog over there. So
Exactly. I
yeah.
know you'll come to see the dog before you'll see me. I
Yeah,
understand.
no, it's a tie. It's a straight up tie, Don. So anyway, Peter, that's all I have. And Don, I know you were a little under the weather, so thanks for joining us today. We're gonna let you go get that prescription. Um,
Yeah. Thanks,
Yeah.
Dennis. Appreciate talking
yeah,
with both of you today. It's Always good to see you.
Yep.
And
Great to see you, and hope you and your family have great holidays. And we'll see you in early January when I come bug you for we're going to set up your trials.
very good. Sounds good, Dennis.
All right.
Sounds
Thanks,
very good.
thanks, Don.
Thanks very much, Don.
Peter,
Really appreciate your time.
we did it again.
We did. That's one more in the can.
There you go. All right. Well, we'll be back in. I think we have figured out we're on an every other week schedule, so we'll be back in a couple of weeks again with another episode of the Grower Talks with part of the Platform 10 platform.
Looking forward to it, Dennis. And if we don't speak before, hope everybody listening to here has a great summer, Christmas break and Christmas holidays. And then, as you said, early January, we're back into it.
That's right. And the next time we're together again, we won't be together again. You'll be in New Zealand, and I'll be here. So we'll have to coordinate the timing of that. But,
We'll do that. No problem at all.
Terrific. All right. See you the next go around. Don, thanks again.
Thanks, Dennis. And Peter, have a wonderful holiday.
Thanks. You too.
Looking forward to it. Looking
All
forward
right.
to it. Thank you very
All
much,
right.
Don.